Welcome to our leadership journey. We are Mike Cloutier and Peter Yanuszewski, and our goal is to interview people leaders at different stages of their career, from frontline managers to CEOs, and extract the leadership lessons they've learned on their journey to help you become a better leader. On this episode of our leadership journey, we have the absolute fortune to chat with Angelique Berg. Angelique is a passionate leader in the nonprofit sector, currently serving as the Senior Vice President of Stakeholder Relations at the Canadian Association for Pharmacy Distribution Management, where she is focused on influencing policies and regulations to better enable safe, secure, and timely access to medications for Canadians. Her career in the nonprofit sector began at the Canadian Orthopedic Foundation, where she spent over 7 years in numerous roles of increasing responsibility. She has also been at the helm of Hypertension Canada, where she served as CEO for over 6 years. In our discussion, we cover the perks and downfalls of managing teams remotely during the COVID pandemic, the differences in leading teams in the for-profit versus nonprofit sector, do's and don'ts of coaching your manager, and most importantly, how to tame a chipmunk.
Let's kick things off with talking a little bit about some of the things that are really important to you in your leadership these days.
Right now, I'm the Senior Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement at CAPTM, which is a mouthful. It's the Canadian Association for Pharmacy Distribution Management. And essentially, we represent the pharmacy distribution supply chain. So right from manufacturers of medicines all the way to the pharmacy. And there are a couple of big issues happening right now. Of course, the COVID vaccine rollout, but near and dear to my heart are drug shortages. And through this pandemic, it has really illustrated Canada's vulnerabilities in drug shortages. And there's a real push to figure out solutions to make sure that we're able to get medicines to Canadians when and where they need them.
Angelique, you've had a tremendous career in both the for-profit and the not-for-profit segments. I wonder if you could just share some of your learnings and just your experience related to leadership.
Sure. When I jumped the fence from the for-profit sector to the nonprofit sector, one of the things I noticed was that you suddenly become a little bit dumb in the eyes of the for-profit sector. And honestly, I needed some deprogramming after I jumped that fence. I thought I was going to go over there and fix everything. And what I learned was that there's nothing that needs fixing. Actually, the nonprofit sector can make a dime go as far as $1. They can make people work for them and do work for them in throngs of people, and they're not being paid, they're being led. And that's the difference. And the leadership in the nonprofit sector, you definitely have to bring your business head to it, but you also need to bring that passionate heart and to touch people at their hearts about the cause that you're generating, about the money that you're raising, about the outcome that you're going to have. And that kind of leadership is a whole lot different than the for-profit sector. You don't have the hammer of a salary or a role. You need to touch them in what they believe and what they want to achieve. So that was a real learning for me in how you lead in the nonprofit sector. It's probably the same as the for-profit sector in a lot of different ways, but you can achieve so much with leading with the heart.
So, Angelique, that the title of this podcast is our leadership journey, right? So the question that I have for you is, and this is a broad one, so you take it any way you want, but how would you like to be remembered as a leader?
I'd like to be remembered as a leader as a person who helped people step outside their comfort zone and achieve more than they thought they were possible of achieving. And there's nothing that makes me happier than seeing the people that I've led go on to bigger and better things. And that's what jazzes me most.
So, Angelique, as a follow-up, I did have a peek at your LinkedIn profile, so I did learn a few things. So you recently completed the executive program at Smith School of Business at Queen's University, which is my alma mater, so very excited about that. So I'm curious and again, when I clicked on that link to follow through, it did say that program is built to develop outstanding leaders. And I'm using the direct quote from the website. So what from that course did you pick up? Did you learn that you're now employing in your current role or in prior roles?
Oh, so much. I actually wish that I had it in my 30s. But having it now, there's always something to learn and always something to gain. I think the biggest thing that I got from it was actually the sports analogies. There were some very just high caliber sports coaches that were involved in the leadership program. And one of the things that I took away from that was the importance of conveying to the people that you're leading that you're not telling them that they're doing a bad job. You're actually trying to take their double axle to a triple axle. And when you put that in that language and you put that in your own mind and help your people understand that, it takes on a whole different theme. When you were talking about my coaching you back when I was working for you, there's a big piece of that was because of the job that I was doing at the time. I was in public relations. So it was really important that my president shone. And so it was very easy for me to give you feedback because that was my job at the time. So, whether that's good or bad for the long term of our friendship, that's kind of what set the stage, wasn't it? That here's what you're doing right, Mr. President, and here's what you're doing wrong. It really did carry through.
So I think that actually is the very foundation of both our professional relationship and our friendship. I think the fact that we have, just really robust, direct conversations. We have a lot of laughs too, which I think is also, and I mean that on the professional side. I mean, Peter, I wish you could have been a fly on the wall when we were taking the GO train together, when we were both working at CDA. Every once in a while, we'd end up on the train together. We'd actually coordinate to meet. Sometimes it would just be by happenstance, but some of those conversations, I mean, honest to God, I mean, I would sit there sometimes and think, like, am I the boss? I'm the boss. Right? Like,
Angelique, if I could just ask a quick question on the topic of coaching your manager, your boss. Any tips, tricks, sort of tactics that you've utilized? Because that is a pretty treacherous area potentially, right? Depending on what the feedback is, how it's received. I mean, there's so many variables here, and it's a little dicey for someone to attempt to give feedback to their manager. Any thoughts on that?
I think I did have some good training, honestly, from my work in public relations when it was my role to coach up. When we were doing, whether it was media interviews or there was a talk to give, or whether it was an all-employee meeting, but more generally, coaching up it's thorny. It can be thorny if your boss is open, curious, willing to learn, and wants to improve themselves. It makes it very open, and you can feel that about a person. If they're more guarded, more sure that what they're doing is right, and man, that's difficult. That's a really difficult thing, and I have run into that in my career, and it's not gone well. I'd leave those roles because if you don't have good two-way communication, you don't have good mutual respect and appreciation for each other. Who's going to get anything out of that? It's okay that those marriages end. It really is. There was a pivotal moment in my development that was actually brought to me by the chair of my board at the time. It's an orthopedic surgeon. And I was wringing my hands about something, trying to make a decision. And, it probably sounded very juvenile and very inexperienced when I was talking to him about it. And he said to me, "Oh my God, Angelique, why are you even worried about this? In my job, if I make a mistake 1 millimeter to the right or 1 millimeter to the left, somebody bleeds out and dies on my operating table. If you make a mistake, you just try again." And that had such an impact on me. When we hear people say, well, no one dies. It's true. When we do a mistake in our work, there aren't many of us that are in positions where we would actually cause death. So we can just try again. And that's the beauty of it. And the beauty of coaching people is that if they make a mistake, they can try again. And everything is fixable. And that moment from that orthopedic surgeon was totally pivotal in my development.
Do you think leadership is innate, or is it something that's developed?
I'm not sure how it is for other people, but for me, it was definitely developed. As I mentioned earlier, I was a task-driven person. It really was. I had to consciously develop my leadership skills. Had to consciously remember respect and appreciation was something that I wrote at the top of my journal every single day. And it's because it's what I felt, but I wasn't conveying that in my words or how I spoke to people and how I made them feel when they were sitting in front of me. And eventually that became second nature. It really did. But it took work, and it took conscious work. And so for me, I would say it's developed.
Angelique, if you could go back to that very first post where you had some team, whether it's a team of two or one, or you had a direct report for the first time, what is the one thing that you would tell yourself now in retrospect?
Oh my God, run. That's probably the first thing. And actually, I shouted at all the people around me, run. What I would tell myself about that, that first time, gosh, be kind. Really, be kind and be conscious. Not everybody thinks as quickly or as efficiently. You have to allow for all kinds of people around you. You can't just hire people that look like you or talk or think like you. You need to make room for everyone, and everyone has such potential and such value to add. And there's just amazing value to be unleashed in that kind of approach.
So, Angelique, one question that I find very interesting is how deliberate people are in terms of how they want to be perceived as a leader, right? So I think some traits we have innate, they're natural. You sort of come forward with some of these things, but other things you need to sort of turn the dials up on, right? So I'd like to know from you over the years, what have you noticed comes naturally to you in a leadership position? And what are those things that you find yourself having to be very deliberate and conscious about?
So I am by nature a very, very task-driven person. It was really difficult for me to bring that people element in. And I feel very sorry to some of the people that I led early on because I was actually really terrible at it, unwittingly. But, working for Mike Cluche and working with Tom Potter and a number of people at Stakeholder Canada really helped to help me to understand the importance of authenticity and making sure that the way that you want people to remember you and how you intend marry up, and that so that what you want to come through actually comes through. That was the first thing. The second thing is that you always want to be sure that people will remember you for how you made them feel, not how you intended, not what you actually did, but how you made them feel at the end of it. So one of the things that I always try to keep in mind is I never want someone to go home from work and complain about me over the dinner table or kick the cat or ground the kid. I want them to be happy, have some great story to tell about what they accomplished that day and the great things that happened.
I'm going to kind of take us back to the beginning around COVID, because I think it's almost impossible not to address the issue of what's happening relative to the work environment today. And what are your observations about what's happening in the work environment related to COVID and some of the things that either you're doing or you see people doing that are helping employees be better during a very difficult time?
And I think the first thing that struck me was the move to home-based work. I think that was really hard for a lot of people. That transition was really difficult. I was able to help with that. I've been remotely based, and I'm leading remotely teams for the better part of 20 years. So I didn't find that difficult, and I was able to help people with that. But I do think COVID really did force us to care more about what's happening with our employees and care more about what's happening around us. Seeing kids run past Zoom calls and that sort of thing, that's the norm, and that's okay. It brings the humanity into the workplace, and we're all dealing with something. We're all struggling with different things, and it's just nice to know that we're all in it together somehow.
Actually, on that point, any other legacies that you think will remain, Angelique, in terms of leading during COVID, which is obviously a very unique scenario? What else do you think will last beyond this when we potentially go back to the office in some hybrid model?
I do think there will be a large virtual element that remains. I think people have been far more productive. They've been able to marry their work and their home life much more effectively. For me specifically, my son is autistic. So when I was much younger, it was so much easier to be really productive at work and to marry the work and the home life so that it was productive for my family and productive for me. And it really allowed me to take off. I do think that, that element will remain. The other element is the travel aspect of things. When you remove the requirements of traveling and you're putting on conferences and meetings and the like on an online basis, you're removing the barriers to attendance for a lot of people. So that's also really helpful. And I hope that we see more of that. I'm really anxious to be able to go out and see people in their offices and work in offices myself. But I hope that those things still stay. We want to make sure that we're building our teams and building our input and consensus from as many people as we possibly can. So to remove those barriers, make sure that we can improve the caliber of the input that we receive.
So if you're okay with it, we would like to move on to the rapid fire section. This is the first rapid fire question. And there's a preface to this one, because as I was doing a little bit of research on you, and I don't know how well aware of this you are, the question is about, if someone wrote a biography of your professional journey today, what would be the title? And the funny thing is, there actually is one for you. Did you know that Amazon has a biography on you?
No,
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah. So this is very fascinating. It was published on January 2019. It is entitled Angelique Berg, CEO of Hypertension Canada, which at the time I think you were. And it is stated in the description that this was driven by AI. So there's an AI written biography about you that's available in paperback on Amazon. So now that we have that out of the way, pretend you didn't know that, and someone was going to write a biography about your career journey thus far. What would be the title?
Oh gosh, I probably something like Prairie Girl Goes Downtown. And the reason that I say that is every time I go downtown Toronto, and I'm standing at University in Dundas or coming out of Union Station, I still marvel that I'm here and that I've been able to accomplish what I have, and that the curiosity and the wonderment never leaves. I still feel like that prairie girl from Alberta, looking up at the big tall buildings and all of these powerful people and these amazing people that I know. And it makes me smile all the time.
Angelique, if someone was to, let's say this biography gets written, and of course now the rights are bought, and now they're making a movie, who's playing the lead character?
I hope it'd be somebody cool like Rebel Wilson or, I don't know, Amy Schumer, like just somebody funny.
Oh, that's an interesting angle, actually. So you chose the comedy route. So right, and the title suggests that this is not going to be a serious movie.
It would never be a serious movie. That's not my life.
Next one. If you're going to write a theme song or an anthem for leadership, so this is just the broad categories of the concept, what would be the chorus line that would be repeated over and over that you think is important for leaders to be aware of?
Oh, there's a better way to do everything. Absolutely.
That's good. That's really, really good. Okay, next one. This will be, I think, a fairly straightforward one. What book have you most often gifted to new employees or those on your team?
Oh, actually, I have two of them. The first one is FYI, for your improvement. I received that when I was working in the pharmaceutical sector. And it is just such a great, straightforward reference on what things to develop. And it's got development points all the way through. That's really plain language, whether you're skilled at the aspect that you're trying to develop, or it's an overused skill and what you need to do in order to master. It's just excellent. That's the first one. The second one is Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and it is excellent. It encourages people to give feedback clearly and straightforward, and to do it in a way such that you're not debilitating people by not giving them the feedback. People need to know how they can improve, how they can turn their double axle into a triple axle. And you're actually helping things, and that book is just essential reading.
Final rapid fire. And this is a little lighthearted one. So maybe you can tell our listeners, Angelique, who is Moose?
Moose is my chipmunk. Last year, actually, the charity that I was working for took a different turn and to really stall its staff and went back to a 100% volunteer organization. So I had a few months there to sit outside, drink coffee, watch my garden grow. It was amazing. And one of the things I did was tamed chipmunk. But I noticed that there was some netting caught around its neck. So I trapped the moose, chipmunk, and my husband and I removed the netting from her, so she was fine. And she's back this year.
That's fantastic. And I followed along in the adventures on your Twitter profile, where you posted some pretty interesting photos. So thank you for sharing that. Angelique, and where can people find you? From social media accounts? Where would you like anyone that's listening here, if they want to sort of catch up with you and see what you're up to, where would you like them to find you?
Twitter is the best place. That's where I'll be live, but I'm also got a presence in LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you.
Angelique, thanks so much for joining us this evening and sharing a little bit about your experience. It's been a great learning experience for me, and I'm sure for Peter as well. And we'll be thrilled to be able to share this on the podcast. So have a great evening, and thanks again.
Thanks so much, Peter and Mike. Much appreciated. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Cheers.